As the sun bled into the horizon, painting the Kalahari in gold and violet, the Sand People prepared for the hour when firelight would become their second sun. The women knelt in the red sand, their hands moving with the quiet certainty of generations. They gathered dry veld grass and brittle acacia twigs, arranging them in a neat pyramid. Then came the sacred act, the slow twirling of a fire stick between their palms, the smoke rising in thin blue curls before the first flame awoke with a soft whoosh. Around this newborn fire, the evening unfolded in unhurried rituals. Children piled armfuls of melon shells near the flames, improvised bowls for the night's meal. Old men sorted arrowheads by size, their fingers reading the stone edges like braille. The firelight flickered against their faces, deepening the wrinkles that mapped decades of squinting into bright deserts. Tonight's supper was simple. Bulbs roasted in coals until their skins blackened, yielding sweet, starchy flesh. A teenage girl ground mongongo nuts between flat stones, the rhythmic scraping and blending with the fire's murmur. The paste would be thinned with drops of morning dew collected from grass blades, a precious desert delicacy. Beyond the circle of light, the darkness pulsed with life. A jackal called in the distance. Somewhere in the thorn veld, a beetle crawled across the sand, its shell catching the fire's glow for a fleeting moment. A tiny, wandering ember. The sand knew these beetles carried stories. Tomorrow the elders would tell how fire first came to live inside their shells. But tonight there was only the fire's breath, the crunch of roasted roots, and the vast starlit sky, pressing close like a worn hide blanket. When darkness fully embraced the Kalahari, the Sand People lifted their eyes to the ancient map above them. To outsiders, the stars might seem scattered randomly, but to the sand, they were as familiar as the lines on their own palms. The Milky Way was not just a streak of light, it was the great ash trail, the remnants of a primordial fire lit by the first people. An elder pointed a calloused finger toward 3 bright stars in a curving line. "See there? The hooded dancers," he murmured. "When they stand straight, the rains will come." Children squinted upward, trying to trace the shapes he described, not just constellations, but entire stories suspended in the heavens. That cluster was a herd of gemsbok, frozen mid-leap. Those 4 stars marked the corners of a sleeping lion's paws. The women used the stars for more practical magic. As they dug for Nama roots by moonlight, they noted how Sister Moon's position revealed how deep the tubers would hide. A young mother paused, her digging stick poised over the earth. "Here," she whispered, and plunged the stick downward. With a twist, she livered up a plump, water-filled bulb, the desert's secret gift. Meanwhile, the hunters sat apart, studying different stars. To them, the burning hare, what others might call Orion, was not a hunter, but the prey, forever fleeing across the sky. They noted its position to predict when antelope would move toward water holes. One man drew a line in the sand, marking angles between stars and distant baobab trees, a celestial compass to guide tomorrow's trek. As the night deepened, the fire burned low. Embers floated upward, mingling momentarily with the stars before winking out. A child giggled, trying to catch them until her eyelids grew heavy. The elder smiled, wrapping her in a springbok skin. "Sleep now," he said. "The stars will keep walking their path, and we will follow them again tomorrow." Long before the Sand People walked the earth, the stars were the only fires in the world. The gods kept true flame for themselves, warming their celestial huts while creatures below shivered in the endless dusk. Then came Kaggen, the mantis trickster, part insect, part man, all mischief. He had watched the gods huddle around their blazing hearths, tossing bones to their dogs while children of the earth grew thin with cold. One evening, as the gods drowsed on fermented nectar, Kaggen crept into their village disguised as a dry thorn branch. The storyteller's hands moved like shadows in firelight, shaping the tale. See how he stretches, first leg then wing, stepping over sleeping gods to the fire's orange heart. Kaggen seized a burning brand, but the instant he touched it, the flame screamed, waking the gods. As they shouted and stumbled after him, Kaggen broke the fire into pieces. One fragment became the sun, too bright to hold. One became the moon, cool and changeable. The last, smallest spark he pressed into the shell of a humble dung beetle. "Hide this," he whispered, and the beetle buried itself in the earth until the gods gave up their search. When it emerged years later, its children carried the fire gift in their bellies, glowing softly to guide night travelers. To this day, sand children are told, when you see a firefly, you're witnessing the last unbroken piece of Kaggen's stolen flame. The women left camp while the stars still clung to the western sky. Each carried her gua, a digging stick worn smooth by generations of palms, its tip hardened in fire to better pry secrets from the earth. Their footsteps made no sound on the cooling sand, their feet reading the ground like a familiar story. At a patch of seemingly barren soil, the eldest woman knelt. Her fingers brushed the sand lightly, feeling for the almost invisible cracks that betrayed Nama roots sleeping below. When she found her spot, she began the work song, a low hum vibrating in her chest as the stick plunged downward. Thok, thok. The rhythm matched the heartbeat of a resting lizard. Others joined in, their sticks finding the hidden larder. Tsama melons, swollen with stored water, their green stripes camouflaged under dust. Bitter bulbs that would soak in dew overnight to leach out their poison silkeysome threads from underground tubers, perfect for weaving. A girl of perhaps 12 watched intently as her aunt demonstrated how to twist a grass rope into a makeshift carrying net. The fibers bit into her untrained fingers, but she didn't complain. By the time the sun stood overhead, her net would hold 3 melons and a clutch of ostrich eggshell beads traded from the north. The true magic came when a young mother paused near a scraggly bush. She tapped her stick twice against a stone, tick, tick, then pressed her ear to the ground. A moment later, she dug up a fist-sized tuber, smiling as the children crowded close. "It sings when it's ripe," she whispered, and indeed, when shaken gently, the root gave a watery glug-glug, proof of the liquid treasure inside. By mid-morning, the digging sticks lay resting in the shade as the women sorted their harvest. They ate as they worked, a handful of crisp gua nuts here, a sip of cool pulp from a tsama melon there. The land provided, as it always had, for those who knew how to listen to its quiet songs. Time in the desert was not counted in days, but in moons, and not just any moons, but the ostrich egg moons. In the hands of the eldest sand woman, a single ostrich eggshell became the village calendar, each careful mark holding the memory of seasons past. The process was slow, deliberate. She worked by first light, her engraving tool, a porcupine quill filed sharp, moving in measured strokes. Each full moon received one notch on the shell's equator. But these were not simple marks. Tiny variations told stories. A notch with 3 cross hatches meant the moon of sudden thunderstorms. A spiral marked the moon when the nama roots grew fattest. A tiny antelope silhouette commemorated the great migration that year. Children gathered around as she explained, their fingers tracing the egg's ivory surface. "See here?" she murmured, pointing to a cluster of unusually deep marks. This was when the old baobab fell. The earth shook for 3 moons after. The eggshell, nearly covered after 7 years of markings, would soon be retired to the ancestors' cave, where dozens of its kind rested in quiet rows, the Sand People's library of years. Meanwhile, the men kept their own time. A hunter ran his thumb along the notches on his digging stick, one for every successful hunt since his initiation. A teenage boy, not yet worthy of his own stick, practiced by carving parallel lines into a piece of camel thorn bark, his tongue poking out in concentration. As evening fell, the elder woman held the eggshell up to the rising moon, comparing its curve to the glowing crescent above. 2 more notches, she predicted, until the honey flow moon. The children's eyes widened at the mention of sweetness soon to come. The relationship between the sand and the greater honeyguide was older than the oldest grandmother's stories. Children learned the rules before they could walk properly. Never take honey without leaving. Always leave the wax comb for the bird that guided you. Whistle the right way. A rising trill meant, "We're ready." 3 short notes said, "Not today." Watch the tail feathers. When the bird flicked its white-edged tail sideways, the hive was near. Today, a young hunter named Zam followed a particularly insistent honey guide. The bird darted from tree to tree, its wings making soft click sounds against the morning air. Zam carried the traditional tools, a smoldering bundle of grass to calm the bees, a hollowed gourd lined with sweet-smelling leaves to store the honeycomb, and most importantly, a palm-sized piece of honeycomb saved from last time. The bird led him to a baobab, its trunk split by lightning long ago. Inside the crevice, Zam could hear the sleepy murmur of bees. He blew a puff of smoke into the opening, then waited exactly as long as it took to hum 3 verses of the honey song. When he reached inside, his fingers came out dripping gold. True to tradition, he placed a generous chunk of waxcomb on a flat stone. The honey guide hopped closer, its tiny feet making no sound. For a moment, human and bird locked eyes. Then the bird pecked at its prize, and Zam whispered the oldest thanks. "Gone, un-eyed. We eat together." As he walked back to camp, the honey heavy in his gourd, Zam paused to smear a fingertip's worth on an acacia thorn, a tiny offering for the next honey guide that might sing at dawn. When the sun stood directly overhead, turning the Kalahari into a shimmering mirror of heat, the sand children retreated beneath the exclamation hun, a canopy of treated springbok skin stretched between 2 camel thorn branches. The hide, rubbed with a paste of ash and marrow, glowed translucent blue when backlit by the fierce sun, casting cool shadows like underwater light. Here, in this sapphire twilight, the children played the games of their ancestors, the stone snake. Using a stick, they drew winding lines in the sand, then took turns placing smooth pebbles along the path without breaking the curve. The trick was to breathe shallowly so as not to disturb the delicate pattern. Whisper bones, 5 polished joint bones from a steenbok, each carved with tiny symbols, tossed and caught on the back of the hand. Their arrangement supposedly foretold what game animals would appear in the evening stories. Hide and seek the shadow. In this version, players had to conceal themselves so completely that not even their shadow betrayed them beneath the shifting canopy. The best hiders sometimes fell asleep in their nooks, waking hours later to find the game long over. Older girls practiced more practical arts. One threaded ostrich eggshell beads onto sinew string, her fingers moving in the same rhythm as their mother's when weaving carrying nets. Two others played foraging, taking turns being the digging stick and the stubborn root, the stick child poking insistently at the root until she burst up laughing from the sand. Occasionally, her grandmother would peek under the hoon to deliver a sliced salma melon or warn against shaking the support poles too vigorously. Mostly, though, the children governed their own blue-lit world, where time stretched as languidly as the shadows, until the sun dipped low enough to permit outdoor play again. In the quiet hour before dawn, when the stars still clung to the sky, but the earth held its breath, the bone readers gathered. Their tools were simple. The scapulae of springbok, cleaned by ants and bleached by the sun until they became translucent as old parchment. Each flat bone bore the story of its animal's life. Veins of mineral deposits where muscles once pulled, tiny cracks from desperate escapes, smooth patches from long rests in the shade. The eldest reader, her face mapped with wrinkles deeper than dry riverbeds, balanced a bone on 3 supporting stones. She sprinkled a pinch of red ochre across its surface, then breathed softly, until the powder settled into patterns only she could decipher. A fan of lines near the spine meant underground water. 3 days' walk northeast powder, clustering in the socket, warned of a beehive about to swarm ochre, sticking stubbornly to old bloodstains promised good hunting where the last rains fell. Nearby, an apprentice practiced with lesser bones, dick ribs, bat-wing joints, learning how heat and humidity made the bones expand or contract. His fingers trembled slightly as he tried to replicate his teacher's circular breathing technique. Failure meant another week of only being allowed to read bones for trivial things. Predicting which child would lose a milk tooth next, or where the sweetest berries might hide. As the sun rose, the readers stored their bones in leather pouches lined with aromatic buchu leaves to keep them receptive. The last bone, a prized Ellen scapula as wide as 2 hands, was wrapped in the soft fur of its own kind and tucked away until the moon of great decisions. In the deepest heat of summer, when the sand burned through calloused soles and the air shimmered like a mirage, the sand children led the way to the sleeping boulders, massive dolomite outcrops that remembered winter's chill long after the land forgot. The ritual was always the same. Find the belly stone, a flat, slightly concave rock worn smooth by generations of bodies lie perfectly still, pressing bare skin against the stone's underside where the night's coolness lingered. Listen, for the boulder's slow heartbeat, the trapped winter whispering through mineral veins. Old Kuwa, the best rock finder in the tribe, taught the children how to read the boulder's language. Granite stayed coolest, but gave up its chill quickly, good for short noonday naps. Sandstone warmed faster, but breathed moisture, best when sick with fever. Quartz-veined rocks sometimes sang in high tones when the temperature changed. Today, a mother spread her sleeping baby on a particularly generous slab, the child's back conforming to the stone's gentle curves. Nearby, 2 elders played the pebble game, their moves slowing as the rock's coolness seeped into their bones. The only sounds were the occasional slide of a game piece and a contented sigh of someone finding relief from the heat. As sunset approached, the boulders began releasing their stored coolness. Wisps of condensation formed in hidden crevices. Precious water, the sand collected in ostrich eggshells. This was the secret the land gave only to those who understood its slow rhythms. Even in the harshest summer, winter still lived, sleeping patiently beneath the earth's skin. As the last amber light drained from the western sky, the children of the sand prepared their twilight game. Each clutched a hollowed sama melon shell, its inside scraped thin as parchment to better glow with captured light. Their bare feet knew every inch of the path to the acacia grove where the fireflies gathered, not by memory, but by following the old ant trail, its sandy ruts worn deep by generations of six-legged harvesters. The fireflies appeared one by one, like stars waking from daytime slumber. First, the steady glowers, elders of the beetle world, their light a constant pale gold. Next, the quick blinkers, young males signaling in precise Morse codes of attraction. Last, the shy ground glowers, their bellies pressed to cool earth, emitting faint pulses like a resting heartbeat. 8-year-old Enisa stood perfectly still near a flowering thorn bush, her melon shell raised like an offering. A particularly bold firefly, its shell streaked with red like coals in a dying fire, landed on the rim. As its abdomen pulsed, the shell's interior lit up with traveling shadows, projecting the ancient story. Here is Kaggen the mantis, stealing fire. Here are the gods given chase. Here the moment the fire breaks into 1,000 pieces. The other children gathered around, their own captured lights adding layers to the shadow play. For this one suspended hour, the grove became a living storybook, its pages written in slow blinks of bioluminescence. When at last the fireflies wandered back to their nocturnal business, the children released them with gentle puffs of breath. The melon shells, still faintly glowing from residual phosphorescence, were hung above sleeping mats, nature's night lights, to guard against dark dreams. The first storm came not with thunder, but with scent. Old Kua woke first, his nostrils flaring at the metallic tang riding the wind. By the time he hobbled to his doorway, the children were already outside, their arms outstretched to catch the fat, warm drops. The rain smelled of distant oceans, of lightning-struck ozone, and something deeper, the promise that the land remembered how to be soft. The sand moved through the downpour with quiet purpose. Women unrolled the water skins, antelope bladders treated with smoke and fat, hanging them from acacia branches to catch the bounty men, hurried to the sleeping boulders, now exhaling their stored winter moisture in visible plumes that mixed with the rain. Children danced barefoot in newly forming streams, their laughter blending with the frog's sudden chorus. At the storm's peak, the elder bone readers brought out their sacred tools. The rain washed the ochre from the antelope scapula, the red rivers carrying prayers into the thirsty earth. One reader held up a particularly porous bone. Water seeped through its channels in surprising patterns, hinting at underground reservoirs now refilling. As suddenly as it began, the rain ceased. The village stood dripping, listening to the land's aftersong. The plink-plink from sama melons overflowing, the gurgle of long, dry gullies awakening, the contented sighs of roots drinking deeply that night. The storytelling fire burned higher than it had in moons. the flames reflected in 100 puddles, each one holding its own tiny piece of Kaggen's stolen fire. And high above, the stars, clean washed and bright, winked at their earthly cousins, the fireflies blinking back from the grass below. And so the stories fold back into the sand from which they came. The sand know what others forget, that every ending is a breath held, not a breath stopped. Tomorrow, when the women dig for roots, their sticks will uncover traces of tonight's raindrops sinking deeper. The bone reader's pouches will grow lighter as the scapula whisper new secrets. Another child will lift a melon shell to catch the first firefly of dusk. And the great cycle will turn again, not identical, but familiar, like the returning shape of a beloved face in the flames. The Kalahari never truly sleeps. It simply waits, patient as a baobab, certain as stone, and somewhere in the starlit veld, a mantis folds its spindly legs in prayer, not for an ending, but for the next beginning. Thank you for wandering this path with me through the sands world. Should you ever wish to return, the stories will be here, waiting in the spaces between firelight and shadow, between raindrop and earth, between waking and dream.